It was by accident that I ended up here. I was looking for some cold climate country, and while it's hard to believe on a beautiful warm day like today, for 6 months of the year it is quite cold. We're 900 metres above sea level, which is great for growing grass. It's a good rainfall area. With over 2,000 acres, we're growing plenty of grass for the grass-fed cattle that we produce. It's the quality of the country, it's the quality of the soil, and it's the water. They're spring-fed creeks that run throughout the property, so whether we get rain or don't get rain, there's always water running through those creeks, which is what fills the dams and gives the stock something to drink. So it's very secure from a water perspective, and good soils for growing plenty of grass. There's a combination of native grasses, but also we have what we call a pasture renovation program, where we go through paddocks that might be poor paddocks that aren't very productive throughout the year, and we're establishing deep-rooted perennial pastures. So they'll grow all through the year. They're sinking a lot of carbon into the soil, which is good for water retention, and they're productive throughout the year. So whenever you get sort of the need for feed, these grasses all perform, and it's a mix of grasses. So when we go into a paddock and sow something, it'll be a mixture of 4 or 5 different types of grasses and clovers and so forth, to sort of give you the ground cover and the feed that you need to finish cattle. It's got a lot to do with soil and the water retention in the soil, and if you're building the carbon content of the soil and constantly increasing the carbon in the soil, it'll retain a lot more moisture. So we've had, obviously both sides of the fence have had the same amount of rain, but my land has had the soil and also the pasture that's been able to maximise the value of retaining that water and growing green grass. I think of it in terms of wine, and people talk, the French talk about terroir with wine, and the characteristic of a particular wine reflecting the environment that it's grown in and the aspect and the conditions of the soil and all those sorts of things. I see the same thing in meat. If I'm growing beef out of this soil, eating these plants, they're going to reflect all of that in the nutrients that the meat and the fat contains, and also in the flavour profile that you get from the meat. And people who eat Taralga Springs beef will tell you that it does taste quite distinct. You don't mistake it for other beef. My goal was to control as much of the process as I could, and that starts with what the cattle eat and making sure that you're growing the right nutritious grass for the cattle to eat. It incorporates the genetics that you're using in terms of the bulls and the cows that you're using and the calves that you produce, and then to be able to control that calving process and when they're weaned, and then growing the cattle out from that weaning to the stage that they're finished and ready to be processed. So by doing that all myself, I'm able to have as much control as you possibly can over the actual eating quality of the meat at the end of the day. Well, I run around 400 breeders, and so on average you're having something close to 400 calves a year, but I only process the steers, so it's only 200 head is my sort of maximum at the moment capacity. It's predominantly a Black Angus female breeder herd that we use, and then we use some Fleckvieh bulls into that genetic mix, which is what sort of gives you the different colouring, and it just produces a bigger animal, a better carcass, and a faster growing animal. So when you're finishing them on grass, it's important to have those sorts of factors right to be able to get them to finish when they're young, when they're sort of 14 to 18 months old. Any cattle will finish eventually, but there's no point having a 4 or 5 year old steer. It's not going to eat well. So you've got to get them early finishing and having the carcass conformation that's good for the eating quality. Contrary to, I guess, popular view, people think that this is where all beef comes from, that, you know, farmers breed cattle and grow cattle and then process cattle, and that's how it happens. In Australia, it's very much the minority. It's a very small minority actually produce beef like this, because, as you say, it is very capital intensive. It takes a lot of land to be able to breed cattle and grow them and finish them, all on the one property. So it's very capital intensive, it's very labour intensive. I do it that way because I guess there's two parts to it. One is the nutritional value of the meat and the fat that it produces. I stand behind and guarantee that that is, in my view, the best possible nutrition you can be putting into your body. But then, in addition to that, there's the quality of the eating, the culinary experience, if you like. And you can't beat it, in my view, then with a 100% grass-fed, grass-finished animal, you'll produce absolutely first-quality meat. Well, it really shouldn't be any more expensive than any other sort of quality beef that's out there. The thing that you should, I believe, look for is to get that connection with and understand exactly where your meats come from, and I think that's really important if you're any chance of knowing what it is that you're putting into your body. So buy your meat from somebody who can tell you the name of the person and the phone number or email address of the person who grew the meat. Contact them, ask any questions you might want to about how the meat was grown and how it came to be. But make that connection. It's the only way to guarantee you know where it came from. Right. Retail places you can get it, Grassroots Urban Butchery in Vaucluse, and also Pino's Dolce Vita in Cogra. And Grub, if you can't get into the store, they've got an online shopping service, so you can order it online and have it home delivered.